FTC Sound is a Brooklyn-based sound design collective funded by DJs Ashwagandha and Quartz. FTC fosters community through sound, music, love, dance, and healing. Let's go check them out. I've always been curious about the creative process. I mean, what's that cosmic itch that absolutely must be scratched? And maybe even more than that, once they've started on that creative journey, what's the thing that helps someone take a project from the beginning to the finish? In this series, I'll be talking to industry professionals about their process, and I'll be asking them questions like, what's the best place to start? The best kind of equipment to use? What exactly does that button do? My name is Watson, and this is Making Noise. Oh my God, it's so good to see you guys.
So good.
This is my camera for something.
Yeah, you gotta have the camera for something.
Yeah. Now, actually, let's start at the beginning. Where are you guys from?
From Brooklyn, East Flatbush, Brooklyn. Born and raised, still here.
Yeah, but you're not from here, right?
I'm from Toronto, Canada originally. Born and raised, well, somewhat raised in Toronto.
Yeah.
And then moved around from Canada to Alabama to Los Angeles to New York to Florida. So I'm kind of making a loop around the country.
Was music an important thing in your life? Did you feel like it was gonna be something for your future, or was that not even in your, were you thinking about it in that way?
That's a good question. For me, I think the point when I realized the importance of music in my life is when I actually started to develop my own taste surrounding music, meaning like I was downloading songs from like LimeWire and like making my own like mixed CDs. And it was really cool to be able to like curate the sound that like I wanted to hear. Obviously also incorporating like the things that I grew up on, because like that was also like a very large part of my musical background and experience as well. But I don't know. I mean, I played the piano for a while when I was younger, but I never really saw myself becoming like a professional pianist. I played the violin, I played the flute, I dabbled with instruments, but I never saw myself. It was more so kind of like an extracurricular that like my parents like.
Okay,
but you know, that informed, I don't know, like it was kind of like a foundation of music, I guess, but it wasn't necessarily something that I thought I would pursue. So yeah, my foray into having music being a part of like what I do now is, I guess, not really traditional in that sense. Yeah. Does that answer the question? Thank you.
Yeah, for me it was similar. Like I think I didn't realize that music was going to be important in my life. I still don't think I realize that. I think it's just something, at this point, it's something I enjoy doing and something that is a way to express my creativity. But music has never really been the central focus of my life. It's always been like extracurricular, whether I was growing up learning the piano or listening to my own personal mixes. It was never something I was like, oh, I'm gonna do this and like do this. It wasn't like an intent. I kind of just stumbled into DJing, so to speak.
What was your DJ name back then?
Oh, back then it was DJ Saint Eve, because my name is Steven, so it was like DJ Saint Eve. So.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
I feel like
DJ
some
Saint
of our
Eve.
early names are always interesting.
Yeah.
What was your first artist?
I had like a bee jelly.
Bee
jelly, yeah, like butter and jelly, but it was just like music curation, setting the vibe, and I'm like, yeah, like I'm a DJ, like I'm gonna be a DJ. Downloaded the software and tried to teach myself how to use it, and that didn't.
It didn't stick at that time?
It didn't stick.
So are we talking college, high school?
Yeah, this is college.
Okay.
Yeah, it didn't stick. But like I was still like, anytime we hopped in the car for a road trip, anytime like, you know, the friends were over, like ask me the aux.
So you guys have obviously different origin stories as it relates to music, and it was never the plan. How'd you get into music ultimately? How did you get into what you're doing now? Yeah.
I don't know. I think we kind of manifested a lot because we would be in the apartment DJing on the phones to ourselves. We're like, man, somebody needs to give us a Friday night, man. This is like too good just to be in our bedroom. Somebody needs to give us a Friday night. And like, man, like we ended up through meeting people and through networking, being at pianos and Trophy Bar was actually, rest in peace, Trophy Bar as well. They actually gave us our first residency. We did a cold email just like, hey, let me rewind, because we are DJs, Quartz, Ashwagandha, but then before we even had that, I was like, hey, we're black people, we're for the culture. It'd be cool if we started a brand instead of just being DJs, and we call it For the Culture. We were like, oh, let's be For the Culture DJs. And then we were trying to find like the name and Instagram, and like, let's just be For the Culture Sound. And then we kind of like, yeah, For the Culture Sound, that has a ring to it.
Right.
Yeah, that sounds right. So we made like the logo, and also a lot of that was because we don't like to be on camera, we don't like to promote ourselves. So we're like, we can use this brand as a vehicle to promote things that kind of like outside of ourselves. So it's not like we're actually putting ourselves out there. We can put the brand out there that represents us and kind of like a proxy for us. We did everything as well.
Really just like leveraging like what we had, like what we had access to, and making that work. Yeah.
What was that process like, deciding to, well, just do a few parties here and there, to let's make a collective, let's throw events, let's make an experience for people? How did you get there?
I think it's always been innate in us to, and as we get older and grow, we're seeing the same things. It's always been innate in us to want to do our own thing. We'll go to something and we'll hear it, we'll see it, we'll feel it. We'll be like, oh, we can do this, and we can probably do it better than what's going on now. I think it's just very inherent in us to see something and then want to do it ourselves, and try and see if we can do it as well or better. And then that kind of trickled into doing events as well. It's like, oh, we're DJing these events and DJing events for other people. Like, why don't we just throw our own events and, book our own lineups and put ourselves on the lineup instead of waiting for somebody else?
Right. Not necessarily like doing it like better per se, or like just putting our own like kind of a flavor, our own flavor on it. Yeah.
So quickly, take me a little bit through the process of coming up with your concepts, because I do note it, like, and I appreciate you've put me on some of your events as well, which has been dope. But I've noticed you've had different names for things and different sort of vibes. So what's the process like? All right, let's do a new space. Is it based on the space? Is it just like a dream? How are you deciding how to make an event?
That's a good question. So we'll kind of like ideate around a concept. That's typically how it starts for the most part. We'll ideate around the concept based on like an interest that we have, or like something that we'd want to see out in the world. And then kind of like fill everything in after that, if that makes sense.
So is that a thing where y'all are just kind of in your daily lives just talking, oh, it'd be cool to have a event?
We literally, so a lot of our events kind of come to fruition by way of like us just like joking around. Like we have a Trello board.
Trello's like a organization thing online that you can use to organize your ideas and share it with people.
Yeah. And so like we'll be like joking around, be like, wait, that's actually kind of like a fire concept. Let's just like throw that into Trello. Not necessarily like having a plan for it at that moment, but just like this is something. Like let's just like throw this in here. And so like a lot of times we would just like go back to Trello and kind of flesh out the idea that we had.
And on Trello, the board where we throw things on, we call it the black hole.
Yeah.
Because it's like sometimes the ideas may never come to fruition, but it's been really cool to go back and look at Trello and look at that black hole list over the past 3-4 years, and be like, oh, we did that one. Oh, we manifested that one. Oh, that one happened. Because like we'll put things that we may want to do, things that may happen, things that may not happen, and it's cool to go back through the years and see, hey, this happened. So I think it shows the importance of writing your things down, or at least putting things somewhere where you can go back and reference them.
Erykah Badu said it. She said, write that down, watch that shit get real. And she was not joking. It's so true, yeah.
Once you've got an event cooking, like, all right, we're gonna do this thing. This is the vibe. These are the DJs we're gonna have. These are the people we want to have. How do you guys plan your sets if you're gonna be on the bill as well? How are you looking at, all right, are you doing a lot of work ahead of time to sort of plan your sets, or is it more like this, we already know what the vibe is, we'll just get there and feel it out? How do you guys?
Pretty much the case.
Definitely the latter.
Yeah. I mean, most of the time, because we're not really, whenever we do an event, it's very, very rare that we'll put ourselves in the prime slot or as like the headliner, because for the most part, like that's not really what we're after for throwing an event. We know DJs that will throw an event and they'll put themselves as like the prime, which as they should, right? Because it's their event. But we usually take the opposite approach whenever we have guest DJs or whenever we have something like, we're usually thinking of ourselves last and making sure that whoever we have first is getting like the prime audience spot, at least, for the most part, according to what their time availability is. Yeah. So usually we're really not even thinking about our sets until like moment of, because there's a million other things that we're taking care of. We're trying to make sure that the visuals are there. We're trying to make sure we're talking to the owner to make sure the times are, we're making sure everybody's showing up where they need to be. And then when it comes down to our set, we're like, oh yeah, I still have to DJ. So it's usually like the last, for the most part, the last kind
and
of.
it's also kind of like a for me at least, and like maybe it's the same thing for you. Like I feel like if I prepare a set, I feel like a large part of DJing is kind of just like feeling out the crowd and just the energy of the crowd. And if I prepare a set, it's a little bit difficult to, yeah, like flow in that sense. Like it's great to like have, what I will say is that like, you know, sometimes like I'll think like, what song do I want to start off with? Right. Or like, you know, like what songs do I definitely want to play tonight? So it's kind of like a skeleton of preparation, and then kind of just like letting the energy fill in everything else, yeah.
Well, would you approach other opportunities in the same way? So, you know, like you're doing, or you've done the set at Rise Radio, yeah. How long was your set?
30 minutes.
30 minutes,
yeah.
So how did you look at that? So that's, you are sort of playing for people in front of you, but it's more of an internet, right, streaming situation.
Yeah, and so in that case, it was really nice because all three of the women that I played alongside, like they have their own kind of sound. And so like it was just like full like creative control, like whatever you want to do, like you're allowed to. It wasn't like we were like B2Bing per se. There was like a break in between each set.
Gotcha.
So you didn't have to like necessarily feed off the energy of like the previous DJ and like you know, blend transition into your set. But for that set specifically, we've both really been feeling Amapiano as a genre lately, like South African house, and so that's where my headspace has been. That's where my like creative headspace has been. So that's just what I played, and that's what felt right.
Gotcha. Well, that's interesting. That we were talking a little bit about playing at a place like Pianos, where it's like, all right, I've got certain songs I got to play, a certain way I got to play. That's not necessarily may not be your vibe, like you said. You would love to hear house all night once. Do you find your mixtapes as an opportunity to get that out?
Absolutely.
Mixtapes, and then also what was cool pre-pandemic was that since we were event curators, we can set up specific events based around the genres that we wanted to play. So we did have, you know, we'd have our piano set and we'd have to do pianos, but then we were also we had another party called Feel, which was house, funk, bounce, and then we specifically set that up because that's what we wanted to play. So we set up an event around it, and then it was like, oh, well, we'll just book ourselves to play that type of music for that event, and then nobody can really request anything other than that because the event is house. So we had the mixtapes to be able to put out the sound that we want now, since there's not really venues, but yeah, pre-pandemic, it was having those different residencies allowed, and being in creative control of those residencies allowed us to specifically specify the sound for a lot of the things. Like pianos, you can't really do that, but for different situations, the smaller stuff, you can really set that sound.
Yeah, you're able to kind of set it.
Yeah, and like, okay, this is what I want to play. So right. So we kind of got our like house situation out, or whatever the vibe was we wanted to play, through our event curation, which is cool.
Do y'all have any advice for people who want to start DJing or start producing or start doing what you're doing, creating events?
Yeah, it sounds simple, but it's probably the hardest, and that's just starting. You know, you can sit and kind of like overwhelm yourself with where to start or like what to do, but I truly do think that if you just start, that kind of like opens your mind, that creative space for you to like figure out which avenues to pursue after that. So definitely just getting started, and then we can talk about like what to do after that, but getting started, just choosing something to do and like doing that, I would say is my advice to aspiring musicians, DJs, like anybody looking to do anything that they want to do.
I think there's definitely power in starting and beginning. We always look at it as 1 year, we took a year to be like, we're gonna plant seeds. So being gardeners and herbalists, we're thinking of it in terms of plants. So yeah, we just planting a seed. Sometimes, like I've planted seeds where I didn't even water it, I didn't give it any light, and it still grew. I think you can take that same concept and apply it to any creative or anything that you're trying to start. Is just by planting a seed. Planting that seed can be like making a phone call. It can be like looking at a YouTube video. It can be like whatever it is that's gonna plant that seed. Even if you did add water, you can take care of it, it's gonna grow. So I think just planting that seed and starting. And if more specific DJ advice is, and I'm learning now and I'm not even a veteran in the game, maybe 3 years in, is just do you. You know, like I think a lot of DJs, they want to sound like somebody else or sound like this. Like it's not going to come off authentic. I think the more authentic you can make what you want, especially because music is dealing with vibrations, right? And you want those vibrations to be authentic. People can feel those vibrations, whether they're authentic or inauthentic, and they're going to react to it in their body. They're going to dance, or they're going to sit down and go somewhere else and be like, that DJ was garbage. So I think if you can, hope that harsh sometimes, yeah. But but if you can be as authentic as possible, and you're putting out those authentic vibrations, I personally believe that it's going to be picked up within the vibrations of the music, and the crowd will feel it. So being authentic to yourself, your sound, and who you are, I think is really important as a DJ, and I'm learning 3 years in.
I love it. Thank you guys for doing this.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having us.
Having me in your home is beautiful.
This is so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's today's show. I'd like to thank Ashwagandha and Quartz from 𝔸𝔻𝕆ℝ𝔸𝕄 Sound for joining us today. If you'd like to learn more about FTC, be sure to hit the links in the description below. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons. I appreciate you watching. My name is Watson. Peace.